In a land shaped by kings and carried by the weight of tradition, there was one rule that no one questioned. When the king passed, you bowed. It was not written in law. It was not enforced with chains. It was simply understood. From the highest noble to the lowest worker, every person lowered their head when power walked before them. Not always out of fear. Sometimes out of habit. Sometimes out of belief. But always, without hesitation. Except for one man. His name was Kale. He was not known for strength. He was not known for influence. He held no title, commanded no army, and owned no land beyond the small space where he lived and worked. But what he built, lasted. Stone structures that endured storms, heat, and time itself. Bridges that connected distant paths. Halls where decisions were made. Temples where silence carried meaning. People respected his work. But they did not understand him. Because Kale never bowed. It wasn't a statement. It wasn't a performance. It was simply a choice he had made long ago. He believed something most people never stopped to consider. That respect should be given with intention. Not taken through expectation. The day the king came to inspect the great structure Kale had been commissioned to build, the entire city prepared. The streets were cleared. The banners were raised. And the people gathered. When the king arrived, the reaction was immediate. One by one, as if moved by a single command, the people bowed. Heads lowered. Eyes to the ground. Silence spread through the air. Except in one place. Kale stood where he was. Still. Watching. At first, no one noticed. Then someone did. And then another. Until the absence of his movement became louder than the obedience of everyone else. The king saw it. He slowed. Then stopped. The entire procession halted with him. The silence deepened. And then he turned. The king walked toward Kale without hurry. Each step measured. Each movement deliberate. The guards followed, tense but controlled. When he reached him, he studied the man for a moment. Not with anger. Not with curiosity. But with focus. You do not bow, the king said. Kale met his gaze. I do not. There was no challenge in his voice. No disrespect. Just truth. The guards shifted, waiting for a signal. But the king raised his hand slightly. Do you not fear me? He asked. Kale shook his head. I understand what you are, he said. But fear is not something I offer without reason. A murmur passed through the crowd. No one spoke like this. No one. The king's expression did not change. But something in his eyes sharpened. Then perhaps, he said slowly, you have not yet been given a reason. And with that, he turned. The guard stepped forward. Kale did not resist. He was taken, but not in the way people expected. There were no chains. No harsh treatment. No immediate punishment. He was placed in a quiet room. Given food. Given water. And left alone. Days passed. Then more. No questions. No threats. Just silence. And in that silence, Kale thought. Not about escape. Not about regret. But about the moment. The choice. The consequences of standing when others bowed. Eventually, the king summoned him. The room was vast, but empty except for the two of them. No guards stood close enough to listen. No advisors waited to speak. Just the ruler, and the man who refused to bend. The king circled him slowly. Tell me, he said, what gives a man the strength to stand when all others kneel? Kale answered without hesitation. Clarity. The king stopped. Clarity of what? Of why he stands. The king considered this. And you are certain of your reason? Yes. And what is it? Kale looked at him directly. I do not bow to power, he said. I bow to purpose. The words hung in the air. Not as defiance, but as something deeper. The king turned and walked toward the open side of the chamber. From there, the entire city could be seen. People moving. Working. Living under the structure he represented. Do you believe they bow because they are forced? The king asked. Kale stepped forward slightly. No, he said. I believe they bow because they have never asked themselves if they should. A faint smile appeared on the king's face. Then you believe yourself different. Kale shook his head. No, he said. I believe I asked a question they did not. Silence followed. But it was no longer tense. It was thoughtful. The king turned back. You think power should be questioned? I think power should be understood, Kale replied. The king studied him for a long moment. Then he asked something unexpected. What would you do, if you were in my place? Kale did not answer immediately. Not because he feared the question, but because he respected it. I would listen, he said finally. To what? To the people who do not speak, Kale replied. The king's eyes narrowed slightly. And how would you hear them? Kale met his gaze. By watching what they do, when they think no one is watching. That answer lingered. Days later, Kale was released. No punishment. No announcement. No explanation. He simply returned to his life. To his work. To the quiet rhythm of building things that lasted. But something had changed. Not just in him. In the king. The next time the king walked through the city, he moved differently. He still commanded presence. He still carried authority. But now, he observed. He noticed who bowed quickly. Who hesitated. Who looked up, even for a moment. And over time, his rule changed. Not in ways that were loud or obvious. But in ways that mattered. Decisions became more measured. Voices once ignored began to shape outcomes. And slowly, the kingdom grew stronger. Not because people feared the king, but because they began to trust him. Years passed. And one day, as the king once again walked through the streets, something unexpected happened. The people bowed. As always. But this time, the king stopped. He looked at them. Really looked. Then he spoke. You do not need to bow, he said. The words spread quickly. Some were confused. Some were uncertain. But most did not know what to do. Because for the first time, they were given a choice. And choices require thought. Kale stood in the crowd. Watching. Not as a rebel. Not as an outsider. But as someone who understood. As the king passed him, Kale lowered his head. Not because he had to. Not because it was expected. But because, in that moment, he chose to. And that was the difference. Because true strength is not found in refusing to bow. And it is not found in obeying without thought. It is found in understanding why you choose either. And in that understanding, both the king and the man who refused to bow became something greater than they were before.